Humans Need Not Apply perfectly covered a lot of the issues that I've been thinking about recently. I suggest you watch it. In short, it's saying that pretty much every kind of work can be automated and that most, if not all of mankind will be made redundant at some point in the future simply because robots will be able to do it better. I don't question that. Let's say that we get to the point where everything's automated and the few people who come up with the ideas are now the only ones in employment. What will happen then? Will the rest of us become a race of slaves and beggars? I don't think so. Everybody seems to see this as a terrifying and very depressing outlook of the future, but I see it as an exciting one, full of potential. Our current system won't work. The entire idea of having to work for money in order to live will have to be thrown out of the window. I see the end goal as being a life of luxury, where everybody has everything they need and the work required to fulfill this is automated. Either that or the robots end up destroying us. But let's say that doesn't happen. I can imagine a lot of people would criticise this prediction, saying that it sounds too good to be true or that the world doesn't work like that. But I argue that the idea of everything being done by machines sounds preposterous, and yet there it is, looming on the horizon. In some areas it's already here. Invest in Google now, people, the future is exciting. I don't see any easy way of moving from a system where we work for money to one where we get everything given to us. Will we gradually get increasing amounts of benefits? Will we have some kind of credit-based system where we all get 1,000 credits a month and use it to spend on everything we want and need? What's the difference between that and communism? A system that sounds good on paper but doesn't work well in practice. I'd like to see this as an incredible opportunity for creativity. With all the time in the world, what would you do? Would you try to become the best CSGO player? Would you paint pictures, write music, make videos or explore the world? These things, I hope, won't be made redundant, even if computers manage to best us in all of these categories. Just because computers are doing everything, it doesn't mean that you can't do something if you wish. I like to think that this sort of future gives us more chance to do what we want, rather than to take it away. The future mentions horses and how they became obsolete, but they didn't really, did they? We still have horses, it's just that their use has changed from working to recreational, almost like pets. I wouldn't mind being in the same sort of situation, given a computer, friends, and the freedom to do what I want when I want. I'd argue that the horses around today have a better life than those from, say, 100 years ago, and I'd like to think that we'll be in the same situation in 100 years' time. But I understand that things never work out the way they should. Perhaps robots will destroy us, seeing us as useless or even a negative entity, and they'd probably be right. Perhaps the amount of science fiction writing that we have today could actually have its use in predicting future problems and allowing us to resolve them before they occur. In all honesty, I'm more concerned about humans and how they'll take the transition, which will inevitably be radical and full of problems. Can you imagine older generations adapting to such a different way of life? Do you think that they'll accept it once it comes? I can imagine my parents calling me a hippie for even imagining this sort of future. They'd argue about job satisfaction and how it gives your life meaning, but obviously these are things our current system requires in order to work. If the entire game changes, these old ideas would look as ridiculous as they are. Given the choice between working in a job and doing what you want, what would you choose? Obviously right now it might not be practical or even possible, but hold that thought. Back to the older generations. Do you think that they'll blindly argue for jobs to be kept and for the advances to be nerfed to try and keep things the way they are? I think they will. This won't solve the problem. It will simply make the inevitable changes more painful once they happen. What about those people who currently possess great power or wealth? Do you think they'll be happy about throwing away the hard work and good fortune that they currently have for the greater good? The people who drive the robotic revolution will have an enormous amount of power, and I can only hope that they do what is best for mankind, rather than for a select few people. You think that immigration is a problem now? What about when some countries are further ahead with this revolution than others? Why would some people want to live in a country where they have to work when their neighbours aren't? In the UK right now, I imagine that the total number of jobs is going down. Those without jobs are on benefits. But if there aren't the jobs out there for everyone, what's the alternative? As jobs are automated and people get made redundant, will the proportion of people living on benefits gradually rise, and will it slowly be accepted as a way of life? What about when living on benefits becomes a better way of life than actually working? Maybe we've seen the beginning of this trend already. What about the booming population problem? With all the time in the world, do you think that people are going to be sensible, or do you think that they'll turn to raising a family to give their life meaning? Will the powers that be restrict the number of children that they can have? What if people consider that number to be too low? I take back what I said earlier. I see this sort of future as exciting, but very, very scary. And what's more, we'll more than likely see it in our lifetimes.